Christmas way. Here we know that Christmas will be green and bright, the sun to shine by day and all the stars at night. Mele, Kalikimaka is Hawaii's way to say Merry Christmas to you. Shine by day and all the stars at night. Mele, Kalikimaka is Hawaii's way to say Merry Christmas, a very Merry Christmas, a very Merry Christmas to you. Mele, trees sway. Here we know that Christmas will be green and bright, the sun to shine by day and all the stars at night. Mele Kalikimaka is Hawaii's way to say Merry Christmas to you. Mele Kalikimaka is a thing to say on a bright Hawaiian Christmas day. That's the island greeting that we send to you from a land where palm trees sway. Here we know that Christmas will be green and bright, the sun to shine by day and all the stars at night. Mele Kalikimaka is Hawaii's way to say Merry Christmas, a very Merry Christmas, a very Merry Christmas to you. Mele Kalikimaka is a thing to say on a bright Hawaiian Christmas day. That's the island greeting that we send to you from a land where palm trees sway. Here we know that Christmas will be green and bright, the sun to shine by day and all the stars at night. Mele Kalikimaka is Hawaii's way to say Merry Christmas to you.
Right.
Woo woo!
Oh, I gotta pause this. There we go. So many things open right now. Alright, let's see. And actually, why is it right behind that? If you can pull that out, that'll be
Sure.
great.
Hey, everybody.
Aloha,
Let us know how
everyone.
it's sounding, by the way.
Yeah,
We're gonna-
so like always, we'll spend a couple minutes kind of dialing in the sound, making sure everything sounds and looks okay. Oh my gosh, this is gonna be a lot of fun.
Yes, sirree.
Awesome, awesome, awesome.
Does that look okay, honey?
I think that looks good.
Oh, Teco, oh my goodness.
Teko aloha.
Aloha, Kansas City. Yay. Oh, good. I'm glad it looks and sounds good.
Good. Yay.
Fantastic.
I
Thanks
got
for letting
my-
us know.
I got my big coffee thing as always.
Yes.
It is
I
going
just-
to be warm today. I think it's going to be, what, 80 you said?
Yeah, it's going to be 80 today.
Oh my gosh.
So, oh yeah. Aloha, guys. I love seeing everybody. I have my laptop in front of me, so that's why you'll see me look down.
Oh yes, we do
On
have a
occasion.
little bump. We are due January 8th.
Oh my
We're
God.
so excited.
Though I don't know. He
Oh.
may show up early. Let me see. because it's you can't really tell from the like you can see that there's something from the front, but it's not quite the same as like the side view where it's like, check this out. He is definitely a big baby. But that's all right.
Aloha, everyone. Angela, Marion,
Yes.
Niels, Barbara. Great to
Yes.
see you guys. We're again, the game plan for today is to take a really relatively simple song and arrangement like Mele Kalikimaka, and we're gonna have some fun things to add to it to really make it shine. And wow,
50. Woo! That sounds chilly.
that is pretty cool. I'd rather be cold than hot though.
This is true because you can always put stuff on, but you can't take stuff off. Like
As much as
sometimes,
possible, yeah.
right? Sometimes you're like, if I could just take my skin off. It's so hot.
But aloha, Jeff, Karen, Colleen, Melanie.
Yes.
It's great to see you guys. Yeah, let's get started. So if you haven't already, we actually tried something different this time, and we have PDFs that you can go and download right now. If you look at the
Yeah.
comments below or in the description of this video, you'll see a link to a little hidden page on our website, and from
Yeah.
there you can actually download all of the PDFs that we'll be using from today.
Yeah,
and
and
in case you don't, if you're watching on your iPad or other kind of a tablet device, we'll still have the charts and everything on screen as well. But if you did
Yes.
want to bring it up big or print it up before we get started, now's your chance to do so.
Yeah, and also you will have to input your email address. It just makes it easier for us to do that. So even if you're on our mailing list, don't worry, you won't be put on twice. But just put in your email address, and then it will redirect you to the page that it will be one download, so for 2 different versions of it. So we just figured we'd start trying to do that instead of having you all email us individually. It's just a little bit easier, and then anyone who's watching this, even after it's been after it's been recorded, we'll be able to go back and actually download the PDFs because we'll keep the site up for as long as possible.
Oh my gosh, we'll see if we end up lining up with that same birthday on
Oh
the
my
8th.
goodness.
That's fantastic. Oh my gosh, Denver sounds wonderful right now. 70 sounds really, really nice.
Though I have to admit, because it is warmer here, I'm still able. There's an outdoor pool that I go to for my exercise, so I'll be able to keep swimming even in November, which is kind of crazy.
Now, we just got back from the Tampa Bay Ukulele Getaway, which is their big festival down there.
That was so much fun.
We celebrated their big 10th year anniversary. Next year is going to be a ton of fun, and they do sell out fast, so make sure if
Yeah,
you're
get your
interested,
tickets.
get your tickets early. I believe Daniel the Sandwich is going to be there. Gerald Ross
will
is going
be
to be
there.
there. The Naked Waiters are going to be there.
But they
It's
will not
just-
be naked. I was very disappointed when we saw. No, I'm just kidding. No, they're wonderful. I love those guys. They're so sweet. We met them at the Antelope Valley Uke Fest.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, so lots of great things there. We're not traveling quite as much next year because of the baby, and we want to make sure we don't jump into things too quickly again. But I think our first big event will be in May.
Yes, it will be in May.
can
We can't say what
that?
we can't say what it is yet, Craig. It hasn't been announced.
Okay.
But we will in May.
May.
We're going to start traveling in May, and start back up again. And then I know we have. I think I need to post it on our website because I'm pretty sure we actually got announced. There's a festival in Winnipeg that we're going to be doing, and I'm pretty sure they already announced us being there. So I'll try to update our website shortly after we are off the air, as it were, for that one. And then we shall see. I know we really want to go back to Berlin again. That was such a wonderful time last year with the Uke retreat. We are in talks with Sabina about that, but we are going to kind of see how our little one is for the first little bit before we make some solid plans, just in case. I have a feeling they're going to like traveling.
And Victor, we'll see you in a few hours.
Yes.
aloha to everyone else who just joined us. This is going to be so much fun.
Oh,
and
awesome.
again,
Hi, Brenda.
grab your ukes out, tune. Let me start pulling up the.
And don't forget, under the comments, under the main video, if you would like to go ahead and pre-download the PDF. The PDF that we have on the screen with us, it's not the exact same format. I actually did really nice with the melody line and all of that stuff for the PDFs that you'll be downloading, which is what you'll see when we teach the song on our online school. So you actually get a preview of the kind of PDFs that we put up there. But for the live stream, for ease of being able to just be able to look at it as we go, we figured we'd have it so that you have the little boxes of your measures and then the lyrics underneath.
And
Is
so
a bit
again,
easier.
if you just joined us, we do have a link for all the PDFs in the description of this video right now. So
Yeah.
if you want to take some time to get that printed if you want, or pull up on a different window, you're more than welcome to do so now.
But we also have it here too, or sorry, here.
And Mele Kalikimaka for me is such a classic. Because what is the really big one that everyone knows? Is it the Bing Crosby version?
Yeah, the Bing Crosby and Andrew Sisters is, I think, the most famous, and I think the first recorded version of the tune.
Yeah, it's so much fun. So a lot of the songs that we were thinking of when we kind of put together a list for the holiday album, this was one where like we have to do this.
Yeah.
You know, we need to do this song. So we had a lot of fun with it. And again, we'll kind of talk through some of the things that you can do if you're a beginner, some of the things you can do if you're intermediate or even advanced. I'm hoping to get to a really fun kind of introductory chord melody version of this at near the end of this live stream. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But let's play a little bit. So also, I know there's going to be some questions later, but these are... Kanalea has been so incredible to work with, and one of the things that they mentioned to us after they watched a bunch of our videos and all our teaching online was, the gloss. Do we have the gloss in here? No, the gloss or for our customs are incredibly beautiful, but they do have a ton of reflections. And one of the things that they wanted to send us that is not going to be as harsh with the reflections are these beautiful Kanalea Oha ukuleles, and these are just fantastic. So it's the same koa top and mahogany back and sides. But we're going to be using these today, and I'm going to be kind of looking out to see if it really does cut out all the reflections. That's
It's so nice.
And then the one Sarah is playing.
Oh yeah, I have one that's a very special one actually. So Craig and I are going to be doing our San Diego ukulele retreat. Some of you guys, I know Brenda's going to be joining us. But for that San Diego ukulele retreat, everybody who comes is actually going to get a model that looks exactly like this. It is a custom oha that has our hibiscus sand inlay. Their headstock inlay is also sand as well. And they're just beautiful. I'm going to play this one today because it's just a really beautiful instrument.
That was a great collaboration to celebrate our big first San Diego retreat event.
And the
plus in collaboration with Reforest Hawaii, which is, again, their big kind of project of helping replant koa trees on the Big Island.
So every uke that is given out to our participants, a tree is planted. So it's a really special. It's really special. So that's part of why we were able to partner up with them and do that. And there are only 12 spots available.
Or left.
Or left, yeah. Out of the 40. So they're going very, very quickly.
Oh, it's so great to see everyone from Berlin. This is so cool. All right, so get your ukes out. What we're going to do, we're going to play through the form once, and then we're going to go back and look at some of the things that either Sarah and I did.
Oh, Sabina.
And then start introducing some new techniques to kind of utilize in the song.
Aloha, Sabina. That's awesome. I'm so glad you're able to join us.
All right. You want to count it off?
1, 2, 3, 4. Mele Kalikimaka is a thing to say on a bright Hawaiian Christmas day. That's the island greeting that we send to you from a land where palm trees sway. Christmas will be green and bright. The sun will shine by day, the stars at night. Mele Kalikimaka is Hawaii's way to say Merry Christmas to you.
All right, so
I did it slowly so that we could all try it together.
hello, Larry and Karen.
Oh, yay.
Already there's some fun things. So this song for me especially is a lot of fun because it starts off very simple. You hold these chords for what seems like an eternity before you even
Yes.
switch. So with that said, it then happens to rely on the kind of vibe you're setting out. Now, the down, down, up, down, or the calypso strum that everyone tends to fall back to tends to get a little messy for this particular song. Like it just wouldn't have that same feel. There's just a little bit too much going on, especially if you're trying to sing over it. This is again what we call like that wall of sound that happens when everyone is doing that same strum. There's just so much pushing out, especially compared to people struggling to sing over
Yes.
all of these ukuleles. So one of the things to really start creating that kind of fun island vibe, and it's very simple, is to start taking apart that strum a little bit and just focusing. Let's focus on just the ups or the 2 and 4 beats. So if it's 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. Now you can either do these hits with an upstroke because it happens to be 1 2 3 4, or like Sarah tends to do, she'll actually rest and then she'll do 1 2 3
With my thumb.
4 with the thumb. Yeah. Now we'll talk about that thumb in just a second, but already if we're to play the song, 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. Mele Kalikimaka is the thing to say. Or am I playing that too fast?
Mele
There we
Kalikimaka
go.
is a thing to say on a bright Hawaiian Christmas day.
So it already has that nice space for the vocals, and it gives you that kind of islandy vibe while emphasizing those kind of offbeats there. Now, going back to the thumb, there is a gigantic difference in the tone that we can get from, again, using different fingers. The difference of an upstroke with the pad of my index, or the difference of the nail coming on the way down, or the thumb using like the flat part here, or even something I tend to do, which is actually, if I know I'm going to be doing those hits a lot, I'll actually prep index, middle, and ring on the bottom 3 strings, the C, E, and A, and just do an up, kind of pull in, and it leaves my thumb to emphasize that G when I want to, but we'll get to there in a second. But again, or even pinching all 4, there's a lot of ways to manipulate the sound just by what fingers and how many fingers you're using. And again, it usually tends to open up more space when you try to be more deliberate about that.
Yeah.
Now, the first thing I typically do, which I forgot to do for today, is whenever I'm learning something new like this, the biggest thing is to look at those transitions. Because again, the chords themselves are not too bad. So let's take a look and see if there's anything weird. So we have the C chord for a long time. Then we have that E flat diminished chord. Now, going from a C chord to that diminished chord for some of you might be a little tricky. Here's what a little shortcut, especially Sarah likes to pull this one off a lot. But let's hold that diminished chord for a second. So it's going to be 2, 3, 2, 3, starting with the string closest to your face, index, ring, middle, pinky. Now, if you lift these 3 fingers off and leave your pinky down,
There's C.
that's your C chord right there. So if you know you're going to that diminished chord and you want to get there really quickly, you can just drop those 3 down. So you're playing the C chord with that pinky. So again, we're always looking at these little shortcuts just to make things a little bit easier. But again, if you're used to getting to that shape, you'll be fine. But for those who are kind of starting out still, this is a nice little shortcut. Oh.
One other thing I also want to add too is when you're going from that E flat diminished to G7, this can seem awkward at first, but one thing that you could potentially do is take this shape, slide it down in pitch, and remove your index. And there's G7 already, as opposed to flipping around and moving and playing G7 how you're used to with your index here. Also, you're playing G7 for so long, you could play it both ways. So I could start with moving it down and then switching later in the song if I'd like to, because it might make the next transition easier because you get to hold that G7 for an eternity.
All right, now we hold G7 for a while. We'll give you some fun stuff to do there later. Back to
Yes.
C, nice and easy.
Yay.
C7. Then
Easy.
we have F, easy.
Now,
Here's the fun part. That walk down is really fast. If the beat is 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to rest on that one beat. Hold that C7. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 to the A7. Now, if you follow that pattern from C7, 1 fret down to B7, 1 fret down to B flat 7, and if you push it down one more time, that's your A7 there as well. So you can keep that middle finger there if it makes it easier for you. Nice. And then we have the D7, not too bad.
Yeah.
G7, nice and easy. C. Now we have a E minor 7 flat 5, which looks like a C7, but adding a middle finger to the C string on the 2nd fret. Now the A7 sharp 5.
fancy.
2 ways to do this. Because we're coming from this chord shape here, we could slide down and then add our ring finger to the E string and then release that ring finger. Or we could, hop there. But that then again takes a little bit more experience kind of getting used to that shape or just sliding down, which for now I think is going to be the easiest way to do that. D7, G7, C. Not too bad, right? All right, now, with that said,
Should we play it a little faster?
this is the point where I feel like when I'm learning something new, the trickiest part for me would probably be that walk down because of how quickly it transitions compared to the rest of the song. So that's where I'll spend, commercial breaks watching, The Good Place or something fun. And just practice, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, repeat. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So really kind of dialing in just that tricky section there.
Yeah.
And again, we can try it one more time faster, and then we'll start to give you some variations
To
on some of
manipulate it.
these chord shapes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And feel free to play on beats 2 and 4 if you'd like, or you can do whatever strum you would like. One other thing I also, when we get to that walk down where you have to jump up to that C7 on the 3rd fret, remember, that F chord is pretty easy. If for practicing purposes you need to lay out of that F chord for a couple of beats, it doesn't matter. Craig and I will be playing F the whole time. So you can kind of rest for a second, get in position, and then try to do the walk down with us. Because I'm sure you can play F with no problems. All right. 1, 2. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mele Kalikimaka is a thing to say on a bright Hawaiian Christmas day. That's the island greeting that we send to you from a land where palm trees sway. Here we know that Christmas will be green and bright. The sun to shine by day and all the stars at night. Mele Kalikimaka is Hawaii's way. Say Merry Christmas to you. Woo! Yeah.
Okay, now, a couple things I did differently for that one.
Very fancy, Craig.
To kind of keep that drive going, I changed up my strum. Instead of just focusing on the 2 and 4 beats, I did more of I'm really emphasizing those two downbeats in a row, so it's gonna sound like this: down, 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 rest, rest, down, down, rest, rest, down, down, rest, rest, down, down, rest, rest. So we have now in between those two downs, or the two downs, down, down, rest, up, down, down, rest, up, down, down, rest, up, down, down. The focus are those two big downs. So in between, down, down, during the rest, up, very, very light. Rest, up, down, down, rest, up, down, down, rest, up, down, down. But that's going to give a little bit more of this driving kind of rhythm.
Thing to say on a bright Hawaiian Christmas day. That's the island greeting that we sent to you.
So again, that's one of my fun ways to kind of change it up a little bit
Yeah.
more and to give it more of that drive. And again, that focus is even more also on that second down, down, rest up, down, rest up, down, rest
And
up,
that particular
down,
one that he's
down.
emphasizing is the one that I'm playing, which is the second beat. So that way we're locked in together during that spot.
Nice. Now let's see. During that G7.
Ooh.
Now, I'm looking at the. Let's see this way. The third line, right about there. That long
Yes.
time of G7s.
That's the island greeting area.
So what I'll tend to do is create some movement there, and again, this is utilizing what I like to call the gigantic G7 shape.
Woohoo.
And all that means is if I have a G7 here, if I squished everything up 2 frets, 1, 2, and then I extended the bottom 2 guys up 1 more fret, it's gonna look like that. So here's my small G7. I'm gonna squish up 2 frets and then extend those 2 guys. I have my gigantic G7, and it's gonna sound beautiful even when someone else is playing the small G7. Now the reason why this works, if we're to look at F and then F7, so this is my F7 shape in my 4-note or holding all 4 strings version of F7. If I was to slide it up 2 frets, that would be my G7. So I went from F7, F sharp 7 to G7. Now it does look different because of that finger here. This note I'm going to actually take off because G is found in G7. So it happens to be in this particular case that I could play this chord with or without that finger and it'll still sound like a G7. So that's why this is one of the few times where you can take the same shape, squish up 2 and then extend, and it's that easy to create your second version of G7. So that's why it works in that particular way.
And the only thing I want to add to that is this particular voicing of G7 does sound best on a high G uke. On a low G, you just need to be a little careful because sometimes that low G, if you strum too hard and hit the G string really hard, it's going to overpower the rest of the chord. So just watch out if you do use it when you play low G.
And Midor has a very awesome comment in the chats where you can. So the thing about different strum patterns and all of that too is that the emphasis does make a big difference. For
Yeah.
example, if I was to just do down and ups 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and now even with that same typical beat, if I emphasized certain hits, all of a sudden it creates a completely different vibe. Or again, that's the beautiful thing about dynamics and having certain things that kind of hit a little harder. It can have so much control over the vibe that you're going for. So a fantastic comment there.
Yes.
Okay, now, so that G7, so Red Hawaiian Christmas Day, that's the island greeting that we send to you from a land where palm trees So one of the things that, again, we'll bring up is that from that gigantic G7, we can extend with that pinky to the 7th fret. We can take the pinky off. We can slide back down to small G7, add the pinky to the 3rd fret, take off the pinky for small G7, and then to C. So we have this nice movement over that G7 chord. So again, this is small G7, up 2 frets, extend, pinky on the 7th fret, pinky off, small G7 with pinky, pinky off to C chord. Now,
Nice.
from there, so again, that's something you can mix and mingle a little bit. For example, a bright Hawaiian Christmas day. That's the island greeting that we send to you, the land where palm trees swing. So one other thing I did there was manipulate that open A string as well. So between the pinky extended down to the gigantic G7, or pinky on the 3rd to the regular G7, or to an open A, you have so many options now to kind of mix and mingle and choose from.
So cool.
Now for the C7 that comes up at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line there. What is the melody?
Here we know that Christmas.
Christmas is very high for me.
Yes.
Yeah. One of the things that this particular dominant chord shape has is that harsh kind of flat 7 note there on the bottom. One of the things I love doing is actually just playing that barred version of C7. And this is something that we're going to use for the walk down anyway, so you can put it here.
It's great to
And it's
practice
going
it.
to be a little bit nicer on the ears. And not only that, but when we're going from the last line of Palm Trees Sway, going from that C major chord, sometimes that difference doesn't sound that much. So there's less of an impact that happens when you go to that C7 here, compared to Land where palm trees sway. Here, all of a sudden, you know that there's a big change. So that really helps push you to that next section. F, and then
Yep.
Nothing too fancy there. You can always do different A7s walking up. Now the D7 to G7 there. One of the great things I love adding is a sharp 5, and this is something I'll probably talk about in
I'll
your
talk about in the
next
jazzy
version,
one, but no worries.
We'll introduce that for this one. I love this movement. So from a D7, let's hold that bar D7. So to have 2 hits there. Now for this G7, we're going to do a little walk up. We're going to do a G7 here. Then we're going to do a big, gigantic G7. Now we're going to add pinky not to the 7th, but the 6th fret. And that's going to lead us back to the C chord. So in context, it's going to sound like this. All the stars at night. So it's a little quick.
Yeah.
Back to the C.
Yeah.
And again, if you are a little bit more advanced and you want to play that C6 chord up here, I think.
You can, and in the jazzy version, we
Oh,
play
okay.
major 7, so it's going to be awesome.
So again, some of that movement I love doing is that D7 to a G7. And if you want to hit more hits on that G7, you could do 1, add the pinky, 2, gigantic,
And then add
the
the sharp
pinky to
5.
the 6,
Yeah.
to that C6 there,
And
which
one
is
thing-
5-7-5-7.
One thing I want to point out, actually, is that you'll notice that Craig and I on that D7, both of us are actually barring with our middle fingers. I don't know how many of you actually noticed that. And the great thing about that is, especially coming from that A7, is that this finger's free for the D7. Your index is available to be prepared for G7. So that transition from D7 to this lower G7 is actually much easier than if I had done this and then hopped to that shape. So just keep that in mind, that you can bar with any finger that you'd like. It really doesn't matter as long as you're being as efficient as possible with it.
Yeah, if this is the one thing you get from this live stream, it's that motion up I love. So again, so to go from the A7 to a D7, one more hit. Now we're gonna walk up this G7. So small G7, add the pinky to the 3, gigantic G7, add the pinky to the 6. I love that. And again, you can either go up to the C6 here or drop down for the C major there. That's my favorite. Okay, now, sorry. And that takes us back. And typically, you'll have that sharp 5 in the dominant chord that's leading you back to the root or the key of the chord. So that's kind of the turnaround-ish feel for that, in that sense of getting you back to the main phrase.
To say Merry Christmas to you.
Yeah, and from there we'll get into some of the more fancier things there. So again, from that version is again some of that movement with that G7 that you're holding a lot. Again, your options are the G7 with the open A, add the ring back down, pinky on the 3, gigantic G7, extend to the 7. So a lot of options to pull from there.
Yeah.
We had that walk down and that D7 walk up to the sharp 5.
And also sometimes for the sharp 5, again, it depends on where you are headed. I know sometimes I'll actually, instead of adding my pinky, I will just slide up my ring because it's only 1 fret. But it kind of depends on where I'm headed, because if I'm going to this C, to me that's easy, or to the C major 7 that I'll end up talking about in the later version, or even, and then my pinky is free to do the C6. But either is fine. But just so that there's something that one of our idols, Benny Chong, always says, which is, don't be married to how you learned your chords. You can use any fingers, as again, same with that D7, as long as you are being efficient.
Nice. Now, for those of you who are looking at, again, using your basic chords, but trying to create a different vibe, this is also a big chance where you can practice your muting, in the sense of, I also play this live at Sarah. Instead of letting things ring out, it'll be more like Mele, Kalikimaka, and nothing to say on a bright Hawaiian Christmas day. So what I'm doing is, for those of you who don't know or need a refresher, let's say on my G7 here, after I pluck all 4 strings together, I'm taking my pinky and just coming across all 4 strings. But it gives you that control and that shaping of your sound to have this really nice crisp kind of sound to your chords, where you're not just letting it ring the entire time. And again, this allows a little bit more room vocally and for other fills or other things that other musicians are doing on their instruments. The C chord is a little bit harder because of that, pinky having to stretch all the way across, but again, part of it is getting as close to your fretboard here. If your wrist is out, there's no way you can mute with that pinky. So again, a nice straight wrist.
And also for that one too, this one I think takes more coordination, but you could actually use like the other fingers over here and rest them down, but you need to make sure you release pressure on the A string so that there's no sound. The pinky is great because that really ensures everything's going to get muted, whereas this is a little bit trickier, but some people do have an easier time doing that instead of, I prefer using my pinky, but just wanted to show that option.
Another option is that second position C chord as well, which looks like a B flat, 2 frets up, and all you have to do is release that tension, just like as Sarah said, with all 4 strings. So, Mele, Kalikimaka is to say, Christmas Day. Now, for those of you who are, very good with the right hand too, you could just bring it down and kind of mute with all four. The reason I don't push that as much though,
You can get more
is
string noise that
yeah,
way.
there's a little bit more things that you'll hear as I mute it with that right hand compared to dampening with that left hand. I think it's more equivalent like a piano mute, kind of just touching the strings so that there's no vibrations compared to a little bit more
That's
harsh
a good
with the right
analogy,
hand.
Craig.
Now, one other thing that I would love you guys to try is, again, if you're playing with others and you want to have some of that space, one other thing you can try to do is, if I have my thumb on the C string and index and middle on the two bottom strings, the E and the A, what I could attempt to do is use the thumb on the downbeat of the 1, come up with these two fingers on the 2, rest, and come up again on the 4. So you have this 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, thumb up, rest up, thumb up, rest up, thumb up, rest up, thumb up, rest up. And this kind of vibe is really fun because all of a sudden it's going to transform into something like Kalikimaka is a thing to say on a bright Hawaiian Christmas day.
That's the island greeting that we send to you from a land where palm trees sway. Here we know that Christmas will be green and bright, December day and all the stars at night.
So it has, again, a little different feel. And because I'm only using 3 strings, I usually will get the triad in there. But it does leave a little bit more space. And you don't always have to play all 4 strings. You don't always have to, especially when we get to that chord melody thing at the end, you'll see me just using 1 or 2 strings for a lot of it because we don't need all 4 all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so again, there's a lot of things to try out, whether you want to keep to the basic chords and just try out different patterns with the right hand or add some movement with that left hand as well. I'm going to switch it over to Sarah to talk about a more jazzy version.
So in this sort of jazzy version, I tried to give a variety of different options for you guys. So you may not use some of these chords, or you might decide to use some of them. But I wanted to kind of give a variety just so that you could, test things out. Now, earlier in the chat, I know Eric had asked a question about that C6 chord, and we'll talk about that in a second. So anytime I see a major chord of any kind, one of the things that I will generally think about is making it have a 4-note voicing instead of just the typical triad. It's amazing the difference one note can make in a chord. And so I wanted to show you guys that very first chord is a C major 7, but it's different than the basic one that you're used to seeing. And a lot of times this one doesn't pop up in chord books the way that the very first. So the original C major 7 is open, 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 and 2, right? It's a beautiful sounding major 7 chord. This one sounds very similar. It looks like stairs, and it starts with your G string on the 5th fret, and it's just 5, 4, 3, and 2. So you still have that major 7th note on top. And so that's this one, right? So you might decide to use it, you might not, but I wanted to actually show it to you in case you'd never seen that one before. Now, because you play C for forever in this song, I figured why not actually mix it up and play 2 different versions of C. You could play 4 different versions of C if you desired, because you have 4 measures in which or 5 actually technically, that you could do that. But for now, just for ease of things, you've got that. Now that C6 chord, not everybody likes the look of that one. Now in the PDF that you can download from our website, that one does not show that 2nd fret totally barred the way it does in this video. But there's 2 ways I've seen folks play this chord. The way that I tend to do it is I bar that 2nd fret, my middle finger will bar the E and the A string, and then my ring reaches over and bars, or not bars, but just touches the C string on that 4th fret, right? This can be a pain in the hand, especially because this finger is only covering 2 strings. You could, however, do a little trick that you'll see Craig sometimes do, which is this finger will actually cover 3 strings, because it doesn't matter if this actually hits the C, because it's being held down a fret up in pitch on the neck. So you could do that if it gives you a little less of a bend there, which is kind of nice. Also, you have 4 strings and you have 4 fingers. You could, if you wanted, do 1 finger per string. I find this to be a bit more awkward, but sometimes that's the only way you can get the job done. And so in that case, I use my index. I have my 2 middle fingers here, so the middle and ring, and then my pinky reaches across. I find this, again, awkward. However, some people do, whether it's arthritis or they've just broken their finger multiple times or whatever, they just cannot seem to be able to get this finger to do that little bend there. It doesn't matter to me. However you get the job done works.
And one thing I do want to point out, too,
Yes.
is that a lot of people, when they start learning this shape, they get so fixated on that index bar.
Yeah.
But when you look at what's being played, again, 75% of this chord shape is these 2 fingers.
Yeah.
The bar, the index, is only in charge of that G string. So typically I have students, really work on the bottom 3 strings first and getting that set, then worry about that index taking control over that G string, because that's it.
Yeah.
A lot of people smash that guy in and forget that it's these guys that are actually the majority of your sound for this shape.
And also, the other thing, too, is you can go back to what Craig said about you don't have to play all 4 strings. You could skip the G string and just play these 3, and that is a C triad right there, but it totally works. And also knowing that, as Craig mentioned, you don't have to slam this finger down. In fact, if it's easier for you, just make sure that the G string rings, and I have a curve to my finger right there. You could do that too. It's what gets the job done. But that was excellent, Craig. Because, yeah, some people tend to really slam down that index, and it's not as important as the other fingers. All right, let's see. Can you show us how to tilt your fretting hand so that the knuckle touches the headstock?
Yes, after we talk about after we do the jazzy version of this, I will bring up that left hand hold.
Thanks for asking that. That's a really great question. So, all right, so we've got C6s. The E diminished, I didn't change. You're good to go. You'll notice that I'm moving on. I'm now at the second line, where it was G7. It's now G9. It should remind you of your G7, but it's got a friend. The way that I look at it is I use these 2 fingers, my middle, on the second, ring, index, and then pinky, G9. If something goes awry and you play G7 there, no one will know. It will be just fine. Continuing on, you'll notice that on the 3rd line down, I switched to a different G9. It's on the 4th and 5th fret. You can play it as a double bar the way I have written it, which is like this, 4, 5, 5, 5, or you could do 1 finger per string. It does not matter to me. Either is totally fine. And then I gave you another G7, one way up high on the 7th fret over the word send. So it's 7th fret, I'm barring it with my middle, and then it should remind you of D7 actually, that guy right there, but it's on the 7th fret, okay? Then I have us going back to that 4th fret G9. So I have us doing a little bit of movement during that G7. Instead of doing these voicings that Craig was showing you, we're going through and doing G9, G9 on the 4th and 5th, up to the 7, back down. And then you'll notice on the word palm trees, we've got our regular G9 on the 4th and 5th fret, and I add that sharp 5 that Craig was talking about right there on that 6th fret, right? And then you'll notice there is a 5th and 7th fret, C major 7, 5 and 7. You can play as a double bar if you'd like, which sounds like that, or you can do 5, 7, 7, 7 with 1 finger per string. Again, It does not matter to me. I find barring to be much easier, but sometimes you can have some issues with your hands that can make it difficult. So that little phrasing with palm tree sway, it's palm, you add the sharp 5, and then move up to 5 and 7. And it's such a beautiful sound when you get to that resolve here. As Craig mentioned, if you didn't like the sound of the major 7, you could play 5, 7, 5, 7, which is a C major 6 chord instead. That's totally fine. Be sure to tell your neighbor which one you're going to do, though, because a major 6 and a major 7 chord played at the same time will not always sound so good. But for now, we're just going to use major 7 since that's what I've got written in our music. Okay, so I actually have us using that 3rd fret C7 on the next line down, which looks great. And then, the next measure, after you play the initial C7 on the 3rd fret, we make it a 9, which is just adding a finger to this chord on the 7th fret, on the 5th fret of your A string. And then you take it away. So that's not too bad. And then we'll play an F6 chord, which is down on the 1st fret area. It looks like a D minor with a friend. And then we have that walk down. I didn't change that at all. It's just rest. And, but I actually gave us a different A7. Just to be different. However, you could, if you felt like it, use this A7. It doesn't matter to me, quite honestly. I have us using this A7, which is just your next position up, which is 2, 4, 3, and 4, as far as which fret
Or it
you'll
looks
be
like
on.
a G7 if you were to use
Yes.
no index and slide everything up.
And then
So that's how you get to that
Yep.
G7, A7 there. Now, before you go on,
Yes.
I wanna mention two things. One, aloha Neil Chin. If you guys have not seen Neil's or heard Neil's music before, definitely go Google him after this live stream.
Yes.
Amazing performer and teacher. He's actually he was our number 1 pick to come down and be our first ever guest instructor for our San Diego event next year.
Yes, so
and
he'll be joining us.
Our cruise guest as well before, so it's awesome. He did amazing collaboration with Danny with the Sandwich recently as well. Definitely go and find him if you have not heard from him ever. Now, two, the one big thing I want to talk about is there's a lot of people at this point that say, "Oh, I'm fine with that A7,"
That's fine.
and that's totally fine. But here is why knowing your different shapes can make such a big difference. In that section where we have where were we? From the A7 no, before that.
It's
the
before
walk
that,
down.
yeah, after the, yeah.
Those are all, again, you know this shape already. We talked about this as if you did an F7 and you walked it up to G7, G sharp 7, A7. So these are all just different A7s. This is your A7 in like a B7 kind of shape. This is your A7 in that kind of G7 shape. And this is your A7 in that F7 shape. And all of a sudden you get this great movement. And you can walk it back down with the different D7s, or
Yeah.
as Sarah had the D9 to a regular D7,
Woo!
to a regular D7, to the Hawaiian D7. But
Fancy.
this is, again, things that you have all of these shapes already under your belt. It's just how to apply it now. And again, this is the beautiful thing about knowing how to get from one shape to another in that particular, chord voicing, to give you some of this beautiful movement,
Yeah.
so you're not just stuck playing, the same version of that chord, and that's it.
And the beautiful thing about a song like this is there are many times that you have ample time to try out these different voicings throughout the song. That's another reason why we love using this tune for these kinds of lessons is, you have that C for forever. Try out your different C shapes. You've got, that G7 for forever. Try out different G7s or dominant 9 shapes. You'll really get a chance to manipulate and try out those things within the piece themselves. And if you're going to do that, for today, we're going to give you all of the things, but maybe you'll just try one of those things in your practice session. Say, I'm going to focus on all the G7s that Craig showed me, or I'm going to focus on all these different C majors, whether it's major 7, major 6, etc., that, Sarah showed me. Because these kinds of songs where you hold chords for long periods of time are fantastic ways to practice, and you're playing songs, which is fun.
Now, can you do me a favor? Can we actually have you play
Yeah.
through this version?
Now,
and
the
if you guys
rest of
want to
it-
follow along, you can.
Yes.
But we'll put up the basic version again.
Yeah.
Or if
Well,
you want to play the basic version, just replace all the fancy names with just the bass chords. So
Yes.
C. We have the E flat diminished.
Yeah, G7 can be played in
G7.
place of G9. C7 can be replace C9. It doesn't matter. The only thing I do want to point out is at the very tail end of this, it should be almost the same, except for there's a G9 at the end of the tune and a C major 7 that's the regular first position C major 7. You'll be fine. I'm going to do it kind of slow, so if you want to jump in on some of these chords, you can. All right. And I'm going to play 4 on the floor, very boring. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mele Kalikimaka is a thing to say. Whoops, I messed up. Mele Kalikimaka is a thing to say on a bright Hawaiian Christmas day. That's the island greeting that we send to you from a land where palm trees sway. Here we know that Christmas will be green and bright. Went too far. Sun by shine by day and all the stars at night. Mele Kalikimaka is Hawaii's way to say Merry Christmas to you. Whoop. So that's me kind of going through it. And I ended up playing only on beats 2 and 4 as I was going through
1
it.
and 3, actually.
Oh, was it 1 and 3?
Yeah,
Sorry.
That's okay.
But you get the idea of it, hearing those different chords and how they go into each other.
Now, let's take a step back and let's go. I'll put up the basic version again. And we can play any version that you want to play along with. After we play this once, I want to take you through a very fun kind of chord melody version of this that I actually did part of it in our recording for the holiday album as well. So that'll be fun. And again, for our Artist Works students, I will do a multi-angle video of each version to really get that under your belt, as well as I think, are we going to do a PDF for the chord melody?
We will actually, yes. So for Artist Works, we do have PDFs for the chord melody. And the other thing, too, is that what we've gone over today with the basic version and also with this jazzy version, where I go through a bit slower with the jazzy chords for our Artist Works students. Craig will have the multicam set up so that we can really dial in and get everything nice and bite-sized. So Artist Works students, look for that. It is actually going to be coming this coming month. We're very excited.
All right, so let's take it from the top. Yeah, let's have some fun with it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I'm probably going to play some slightly jazzier chords because I can. So I'm going to start with C6 and probably play C6 the whole time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mele Kalikimaka is a thing to say on a bright Hawaiian Christmas day. That's the island greeting that we send to you from a land where palm trees sway. Here we know that Christmas will be green and bright, the sun to shine by day and all the stars at night. Mele Kalikimaka is a wise way. Say Merry Christmas to you. Yeah.
So
Fun
there's
stuff.
a lot of fun. Again, looking at this, it is a very basic song. There's not that many chords. The transitions aren't that bad, but part of it is that feel. Um,
Yeah.
Kara, I'll probably mention the different options that we introduced in this live stream as well.
Yeah.
Now, before we get to the chord melody version of this, I'm gonna play just really quickly. It's not even like final mixed yet, but just this is a little sneak peek at our version of this that will be on the
Woo, woo,
the
woo.
album. Let's see if I
Yes,
can
we're super
get this to
excited.
work.
Yes, because you can still pre-order our album. There's still goodies that are up for grabs that I'm making. I've been making straps and lays and a couple of stockings, and I do have the quilts, of course, that I've also made. If anybody wants to have a lovely quilt to snuggle up with on your couch as you listen to our album, but that's all on our website under our store if you want to pre-order the holiday album.
And for trivia, for future trivia, we were hoping to get actually some friends to trade solos with us on this particular song, but we just ran out of time with
Yes.
everything. So, and Neil was going to be one of them as well. But
Yeah.
let's see. Let's play it.
Kalikimaka is a thing to say on a bright Hawaiian Christmas day. That's the island greeting that we send to you from a land where palm trees sway. Here we know that Christmas will be green and bright, the sun to shine by day and all the stars at night. Mele Kalikimaka
Hopefully you guys can
is
hear that.
Hawaii's
Yeah, that's
way
coming through.
to say Merry Christmas to you.
Nice. So the great thing too about this is that it's you'll notice when you guys get the album and stuff that Craig and I made it so that he is playing high G and then I'm playing our bari tenor. And there are some songs where you'll hear me do chord melody and soloing on the bari tenor. So we tried to kind of do that so it's a little bit easier to tell who's soloing when, because we mixed it up on the standards album. So we were consistent. It's really fun. So we're super excited about it.
Yeah, we had a Milo Fultz on bass as usual, and
And
Merlin
Merlin Showalter, who's
on
been
the
on all of our
drums.
albums too.
So it's been a lot of fun, and there's like definitely some like jazz versions of these songs, but there's gonna be like some islandy pop.
Yeah, we're doing
versions
some
of
very
stuff.
different
I'm
things
so
with
excited.
a lot of these
I'm so
classics.
excited. But yeah, I'm just we've been really happy with it. Now let's
preview.
Let's talk about the chord melody stuff, because again the cool thing is, I feel like for a lot of you, like I said before, you have a lot of this already under your belt. Now again, our Artist Work students will get a PDF with this, but for those of you who are not Artist Work students, don't worry. This video will be archived, and you can always come back to it and really kind of dial it in.
And I would recommend taking time to like pause, because we aren't going to go quite as slow as we normally do for the Artist Work students. with the video. So definitely feel free when you go back to watch this again, pause it, take notes, so that you can get all the cool things that Craig's going to go over.
Okay, so let's start off. And here's the cool thing too. I kind of wanted to secretly showcase, again, the PDFs that you can download from our website, which the link is below in the description. It has the melodies.
It has the melodies
Has
written
the
out.
melody lines tabbed out
Not tabbed.
or written
It's just
out.
written out.
So being able to kind of attach that to the chords that we have already
Yeah.
out, that's how we're going to combine a lot of this kind
Yeah.
of chord melody style.
And he's mixing up the jazzy stuff and the regular stuff.
Now we're going to hold a C chord. It looks like a B flat, 2 frets up, but because it's a C chord, I can have that open G. So it's going to sound just like that. Now, I'm only going to touch the 2 inside strings. So thumb and index on the inside strings on the right hand. Now, even though I'm holding the A string, I'm not going to really use it for just a second. And the reason is we want typically the melody note to be the highest note in either your chord or your strum. So the melody note is on that E string. So that's why we're only using right now the 2 middle strings. So I'm doing 2 hits, coming back down 1 fret, and then back up. So we have, oh, I see 3 hits. Now, ring finger on the E string, 5th fret, and then release. So we have 3 hits on the original shape. Come back down 1, back up, ring finger off. Back down, and that's that whole first section. Super easy, right? Now, we're gonna extend our pinky to the 7th fret. This time I'm gonna pinch all 3 strings on the bottom. I'm gonna take pinky off, slide down a fret, slide back up, but add my ring finger to the A string this time. So that section again, pinky out to the 7, holding that same original shape. Pinky off, down a fret, come back up, add the ring finger to the A string. Again, pinky, drop down, up and ring. Pinky, drop down, up and ring. So far it's going to sound like this. Not too bad. Again, this is all based off that original C chord shape in that B flat kind of shape there. We're going to walk straight up, open A to the 2. Now, C chord. Back to the 2. Now, the diminished shape. So I'm going to pinch all 4 strings, back down, back up. Stretch to the 5, and end on a G7. So that section there,
Nice.
I'm going to walk up that A string, open 2, C chord, back to the 2. Now diminished, back down, back up, stretch the 5, C chord. Oh, I'm sorry, G7 chord. So again, it's going to sound like this. Nothing too tricky. Again, part of it is just memorizing that pattern. Now from there, so we have so far.
G7.
Now G7. Da, 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 da. Here again, we need that G note as our melody. So I'm gonna use probably my middle and ring here. 2 on the C, ring on the 3 of the E. So 2 inside strings again. So very similar pattern. We're going to do 2 hits. Just come back down, come back up, stretch to the 5 with the pinky, and then release. Again. more time. And then we have another step back and forward. Now we're still playing a G7 chord, so I'm going to go to this G7 that you actually played with Sarah.
Yeah.
So barring 7 and then ring finger on the 8. Now, this is going to look familiar, that gigantic G7, but these two guys that we pushed out, we're going to bring back in. Then we're going to push it out and extend to the 7. So that G7 section is going to look like this, with that barred version here. The gigantic G7, but squished in. Extend out, and then with the pinky. And again, don't worry if it's taking a little bit longer to get to these things right now. You have this video up to review as long as you need it to. But that's how we're going to call it from here, is that bar D7 shape on that G7 up here. Gigantic G7 but squished. Extend with the pinky. Now we're going to do 5th fret on the A to the open A. G7 with the pinky. We already did this, so this is perfect. So G7 with the pinky. Pinky off. Open A string. And then ring finger on the E string. Now here, because we have that walk down, I'm going to do something a little different here. I'll do, with these 3 strings, the bottom 3, C, E, and A, I'll come up, and I'll add my thumb on the G as my drone note. It's going to sound like this. So with the pinky down, I'm going to come up, thumb to the 2, to the open, to the 3 on the E. Because I want that melody note to ring, I'm only going to hit the 2 middle strings here. So it's going to sound like this. Not too bad. One more time. Small G7 with the pinky, up, thumb to the 2, to the open, to the 3 on the E. And then...
And this is just a real quick thing, because it should remind you guys
up to the 7th fret.
in the Artist Works program about that alternating G-C scale that Craig teaches. This is one of its many uses of going back and forth using that G string.
Nice. So again, so you can end on that 7th fret there. So again, don't be afraid later to stop, rewind, and just focus on one section at a time. Now here is the super, super fun part. And again, you already tried these shapes out. This is going to be the, what chord is this? C7?
Yes, it's a C9.
So just like the G9 here, if you're to slide that up, G sharp 9, A9, A sharp 9, B9, C9. So all that section is down, down, slide down. And again, down, when we say down, it's always going to be down in pitch, not down the neck. So down is this way, up in pitch, and up the neck is always this way. So down, down, and I'm going to squish down a fret, back up, pinky out to the 12, pinky off. Again. And I'm going to pluck 12th fret on the E, drop to the, what is that, the 8 on the E, 12 to 8. Here, to make it easy, we're going to hold an F chord in that B flat shape, but I'm not going to touch the G string at all. And I'm going to manipulate the 10, 9, and 8 on the A string. So it's only these 3 strings. Bring the ring finger down, take out the ring finger. So far over there.
Nice.
Oh, sorry. Or if you want to do that shape, you can.
Woo! Which looks like the C6, yeah?
Mm-hmm. No, what chord is this? We're over the
Sun to shine by A7, so you'll be the A9.
A7. So the A9. So same exact shape. Same thing here. I'm gonna step up to the 9. Oh, sorry. Ring finger on the 8. Pinky on the 9. I'm gonna drop to the 5 on the E. Now, that D9,
Yeah.
which we already played in Sarah's version, to the gigantic G7, and then we can extend that. So one more time, from here, from the A, the C7. Here we know that Christmas. Here we know that Christmas will be. Now here's where we hold the F chord. Manipulate the 10, 9, 8 on the A string. The sun. A9. Pluck the 9. Drop to the 5 on the E. To the D9. To a gigantic G7. And extend. Or you could do a G9 there. With that sharp 5.
Yeah.
And then we go back to the beginning. Oh, now.
Little different.
Again, the same shapes and same chords. Down 2 frets, and we're going to add the sharp 5 here. Release the ring. So again, I'm doing 9 and 10. To 7 and 8. Oh, I'm sorry, 6 and 7 with the ring finger on the 8.
Yeah.
Release the ring finger. Now all the way up to 11 and 12. To a B7 shape. So this is going to be 10, 11, 10, 10. Gigantic G7.
Yes.
Now, again, that should get you a lot of the main melody hits within that kind of section there. With the artist work students, we'll kind of break it down a little bit more. But
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of introduce that style and that playing to you guys, just so you have something to really push yourselves or to look forward to in your
Yeah.
ukulele journey.
And the cool thing too about especially that sort of B section of the song, the "Here we know that Christmas will be green and bright." The cool thing that also Craig is showcasing is the pattern. There's a pattern to what he is doing, that it's like you'll play it up here and then you'll move it down, and it's the exact same fingering. And that's something that's really, really cool, that, you know, again, the song is such a great teaching tool because you can utilize it in so many different ways. And as he mentioned earlier, the PDF for the chord melody will only be available via ArtistWorks. So our students are going to have exclusivity to that. But you can always go back, pause, and rewind what he just went through and make your own notes. In fact, it'll probably stick up here a little bit more. I know it does for me when I write things down.
All right, but thank you guys so much for taking the time and joining us today.
Yes.
We always have a lot of fun doing these things. And hopefully, I don't know when our next one is. I don't think we scheduled.
We haven't scheduled December's
December
yet,
yet.
but we will do a live stream in December. You never know. He's due January 8th. I think we'll probably have it in mid-December just to ensure that if for some reason he decides to arrive early, that we won't have any scheduling conflicts.
Oh, thank you guys. And again, you know, there was so much that we try to give in the beginning. If you missed out, definitely look way back.
Yeah.
We did a couple different right-hand patterns. We did a couple left-hand things to try and
Yeah.
create some motion and whatnot and a different vibe. Oh, the left-hand thing. The left-hand thing. That's right. Here we go. So the left-hand thing, the reason why I tend to talk about the left hand a lot in my workshops is because when I first started, whenever I played a chord like this, the G7 even, the tendency to do is squeeze harder and harder and harder. Not the best thing to do. So I'm going to take 2 minutes if you guys want to stick around. I'm going to talk about this left hand really quick while Sarah chats with you
Yes.
guys. in the chat box. But for the left hand, what we came to realize, especially watching these guys that have been playing for 50, 60 years, is that this wrist makes all of the difference in the world. When your wrist is out like this, and again, there's no right or wrong, but I want to give you guys a chance to try something that might be a better fit. And a lot of guitarists will say, first thing you do is put the thumb on the back. And for guitar, you definitely need that stretch. But typically, when your thumb is out and your wrist is out like this, if you were to hold your wrist up like this and slowly make a fist, it's incredibly hard, right? It's not a very easy thing to even do. So again, I can't. I burn out if I tried to hold it like this and squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. But a lot of that tension, a lot of the leverage that comes from this is actually letting this notch, that thing right there that every ukulele has, you let it rest on your index finger, keeping that wrist nice and straight, letting your thumb just drop to the side. And again, there is a little puka, a little hole here. I'm not all the way in the palm, but on the index itself. And this way I can maneuver these four guys any way that I see fit, but still have that leverage of holding it up. So again, I can go from a C to a G to an A minor to F to G7 to E7 to A7 to D7 to G and not manipulate that wrist whatsoever. Bar chords will be a little different. You see, even that C6 chord that Sarah was talking about, though,
Yeah.
I'll still have a straight wrist and pull back a little bit more into my body, and my thumb will come to the back, but not behind necessarily, but up a little bit more to have that leverage kind of roll over a little bit more. But there's a reason why we can play for hours and hours, because we're not actually pressing down that hard. But a tendency to do with that wrist out there is to squeeze a little harder than you need to.
And the other thing I also want to point out too is Craig talks about the hold here and having it in the notch. But if you're playing on the 5th and 7th fret, for example, you still are going to have that same rest. It just moves up the neck, therefore keeping everything nice and stable. And no matter where you play on the fretboard, and of course, as he mentioned with bar chords, you're going to adjust accordingly, but your wrist will always stay nice and straight so that you are able to have the power that you need and use the larger muscles in your arms to help you play, as opposed to squeezing and really hurting this poor little muscle here in your hand. Yeah.
Awesome. But again, thank you guys so very, very much. And one of the game plans while we're going to be home more next year is to actually start pumping out like little 5-minute videos as well, tackling some of the hardest things like bar chords or playing without hurting yourself
Or E.
B flat or E. And I'll kind of, you'll see a lot more online stuff from us as we go forward.
And if you'd like to get notified when we have those little videos pop up, subscribing to our YouTube channel is definitely the best way to do it, because you'll get notified as soon as we upload something. And that's free, and you don't have to worry about us spamming you or anything for when those little videos do come out.
Yeah, but thank you guys so much for
Yes,
taking the time.
thank you.
It was great to see a lot of you, especially so many people from Berlin, which is amazing.
Yay!
Good to see you all, and thank you so much for tuning in. Aloha.
Aloha, everyone.